February 13th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with Donald Trump's NATO comments. His comments saying he will not protect NATO members who do not pay their bills is drawing scorn both at home and abroad. The NATO chief says such comments put European and American soldiers at an increased risk. Bitcoin pushed past $50,000 for the first time in over 2 years. And Nvidia's market value briefly surpassed Amazon's on Monday as investors bought into the chipmaker's market-leading position in AI. Policy discussions with citizens that have been taking place here in South Korea will be expanded into a more than a 10-part series, moving outside the capital, Seoul. The top office says the President Yoon will travel around the country to hold more talks with citizens on livelihood issues. Former U.S. President Donald Trump says that NATO members who are delinquent in terms of defense spending guidelines should not expect U.S. protection. Now, the comments have drawn immense criticism from NATO and his likely opponent in this year's presidential election. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump on Saturday told NATO members that they would need to pay their dues if they want military assistance from the United States. His comments drew immense criticism, as he said he would encourage Russia to do whatever they want to any NATO member country that doesn't meet defense spending guidelines.
Yes. And one of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
Responding to Trump's remarks, U.S. President Joe Biden slammed his likely presidential opponent, saying that the former president is making it clear that he is willing to abandon its allies. Biden added that Trump's message gives Putin a green light for more war and violence, calling his remarks appalling and dangerous. In a statement Monday, NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg said any suggestions that NATO allies will not defend each other undermines their security and puts American and European soldiers at increased risk. He added that there are still expectations that regardless of who wins the presidential election, the U.S. will remain a strong and committed NATO ally. Trump's remarks come on the back of a NATO report released last year, which showed that only 11 of the then 30-member alliance were spending 2% of GDP or more on defense. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
More than 100 people were killed Monday, with hundreds more injured during Israeli airstrikes on Rafah city and surrounding areas. According to a Palestinian media source, Israel conducted about 40 airstrikes on the Rafah region in the early hours of the morning. Some 1.4 million people, Gazans, have taken refuge in Rafah since the armed conflict began. Meanwhile, Hamas said Monday that 3 Israeli hostages died from their wounds sustained from intense Israeli attacks over the weekend. Israel says there are still over 130 Israelis being held hostage. North Korea claimed over the weekend that it has succeeded in developing a new controllable shell and ballistic control system for its multiple rocket launchers. Is the Korean peninsula at risk of war? We're joined by Dr. Mark Barry this morning. Welcome back.
Good morning.
Dr. Barry, it is the first time that the North announced the test and development of the multiple rocket launcher shells. Why is the North making the progress public?
Well, of course, South Korea has known, its military has known that they've been developing this for quite some time. But I think by announcing it, they're basically demonstrating to the world and to potential customers that they can make precision-guided artillery munitions, which are fairly low cost. They're not as expensive as the more sophisticated and longer range weapons. But I think it's a way of showing both to South Korea, its allies, the U.S. and Japan, as well as to potential customers that we've got the stuff to do it and, you know, keep us in mind in the future.
Right, that's also in line with the speculation that the North is looking to export this particular 240mm caliber controllable multiple rocket launcher shells to Russia, right?
Well, you know, if Putin is going to visit, let's say, between April and June, they would be very happy, North Korea, to be able to tell Putin and Defense Minister Shoigu that we've tested these things and we could demonstrate that the efficacy of these weapons to you or to your trusted staff, and keep us in mind for your defense needs in the future. So very much so, I think they have the Putin visit in mind and becoming a much longer-term customer, because whatever happens in the Ukraine war, the war chest of, in terms of munitions of Russia is going to be quite low, and they're going to need to backfill it. And North Korea would love to manufacture stuff that is sort of surplus for them to be able to sell to other customers like Russia.
Right, developing a new controllable shell and ballistic control system for its multiple rocket launchers, and also, countless missile launches beginning in the beginning of the year. Is North Korea headed for a war in 2024? I mean, especially based on the two January 11 op-eds by Carlin and Hacker, and also by former U.S. Ambassador Gallucci. What's your take on this?
Well, when I first saw the op-eds and the fact that they were timed for the same day, January 11th, I thought this was earth-shaking, at least among the community of North Korea watchers. I think many people misunderstand what Carlin and Hecker are saying, which is that it's kind of like if you go to a family gathering and you meet an uncle that you haven't seen in a long time, who used to be rather friendly, even sometimes jovial, and would smile at you, but after many years of not seeing that uncle, you find out upon your new visit that this guy has changed and something is very profoundly different about him. Well, this is what Carlin and Hecker are basically saying, that for 34 years they've tried to bring about some engagement with the United States in order to offset the pressure, particularly from China and somewhat less so from Russia. But that 34 years has been one of failure. And it's something that the Kim dynasty, from grandfather to father to son, meaning Kim Jong-un, have pursued, because they always thought of the United States that although it was an imperialist power, much like China, Russia, and Japan, it was a benign imperialist power. So all of their dreams, if you will, have been shattered because the Hanoi visit, the Hanoi summit with Kim Jong-un and Trump, was such a disaster, which is the responsibility of both sides. But that's the very reason that North Korea has basically said, we've put all that past us, and now you see the new North Korea.
Right, I'm sure the Hanoi summit was a nightmare for the leader, Kim Jong-un. Dr. Barry, in the meantime, U.S. Secretary of Defense Austin is back in hospital again now with even more complications from his December surgery. I'm sure that's a huge concern for President Biden, with two wars raging for which Washington provides arms, isn't it?
It is, because, the surgery that he had is not that unusual, especially at his age of about 70. And normally it's a hassle, but it's not that big a deal to recover from. But he's had two emergencies since the surgery in mid-December. The first one had a lot of negative publicity about it because of the fact that he didn't delegate responsibility to the subordinate properly and inform the White House in a timely manner. This time he did, but the fact that he's made two emergency visits, and although he'll be released tomorrow, he frankly had to cancel his trip to Brussels this week. So I think it's raising a lot of questions. Is this going to be an ongoing urological issue, as well as any potential treatment for cancer, which may or may not be necessary? It may just need to be monitored. But when we last saw him in Dover, Delaware, receiving the bodies of the 3 Americans killed in the attack in Jordan, he was walking with a limp. So we just don't know. It's not a good look, particularly when President Biden's memory is being questioned by the Republican special counsel appointed by the Justice Department. It's not a good look for this administration.
Right. Before I let you go, Dr. Barry, briefly, I'd like to touch upon Seoul's Unification Minister Kim Yong-ho's remark last week that South Korea would share data on Japanese abductees with Tokyo. How much of a big deal is it?
I think it's a big deal. I think it's not being covered enough outside of Japan. The abductee issue is a very serious issue. And although South Koreans, many know that there are far more South Korean abductees since 1950 that may still be alive in the North. But this is such a critical issue, and the public take it so personally. And since Prime Minister Kishida said that he is making every effort to make some breakthrough diplomatically with the North in order to have a summit with Kim Jong-un, he's the only leader, not President Biden, not President Yoon, not any other Western leader at this point, other than Prime Minister Kishida, who's made a commitment to have a summit. So I applaud the unification minister, who happens to be my former doctoral classmate, for making an effort that I am not aware has ever been made by the ROK before, which is to share what intelligence and data they have on these abductees, because the Japanese government has always been convinced that there are far more abductees than those that have been acknowledged by North Korea or publicly by Japan. So the fact that this cooperation has been extended, I think, is an outgrowth of the August Camp David summit. And frankly, we should have a lot of, we should be applauding and encouraging Prime Minister Kishida to try to make that breakthrough in 2024 and try to bring the tensions down with North Korea, because he's best positioned to do that.
All right, Dr. Barry, thank you so much for your insights. As always, we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Following the Lunar New Year holiday, President Yoon will hold an 11th round of policy talks with members of the public, expanding his series of discussions on people's livelihoods to major cities and provinces outside Seoul. His office on Sunday announced Yoon will travel around the country, including to the southern and central regions of the country, such as Busan, Daegu, and the Chungcheongdo provinces. This comes after the leader held 10 government policy discussions in Seoul and its surrounding Gyeonggi-do province, inviting members of the public and experts relevant to each topic. The 11th session will focus on balanced regional development under the theme of an era where people can live comfortably anywhere. Seoul has named a new vice chairman to the nation's top policy body on tackling the chronically low birth rate, which is expected to fall to 0.6 births per woman this year. The top office said Sunday that former Trade and Industry Minister Ju Hyung-hwan will be the second in command of President Yoon Suk-yeol's Committee on Aging Society and Population Policy. Ju said long-term measures will be reviewed and implemented across Korea's economy, society, and culture to tackle the deep-rooted factors behind the falling birth rate and declining population. Yoon also appointed Choi Sul-gi, a professor at the Korea Development Institute with a background in demography, to the committee to help formulate new policies. The president also instated Yoo Jun, his secretary for cybersecurity, as the third deputy director of the National Intelligence Service to oversee cyber intelligence operations. Monumental milestones were reached during Monday's markets. Bitcoin broke past $50,000 mark, and Nvidia's market value briefly surpassed that of Amazon for the first time in 22 years. Lee Soo-jin reports.
Bitcoin has surpassed the $50,000 level for the first time in more than 2 years. According to U.S. cryptocurrency platform Coinbase, at 12:26 p.m. on Monday U.S. Eastern Time, Bitcoin surged 3.65% from the previous day. This marks the first time since December 2021 that the cryptocurrency has been valued at more than $50,000 per coin. The world's largest cryptocurrency was boosted by last month's regulatory approval by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission to allow the creation of Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, as well as a growing interest from Wall Street in the tech industry. The massive outflows from Grayscale Investments' Grayscale Bitcoin Trust after it received approval from the SEC to convert its existing $28 billion in assets under management into an ETF have also begun to subside. Following the approval of the long-awaited ETFs on January 10th, the cryptocurrency briefly tumbled below the $40,000 level, but has since been on an upward trend. Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency, was also up nearly 2% to pass the $2,000 mark on the same day. And the renewed interest from investors in the tech industry was also evident when U.S. AI chipmaker NVIDIA briefly overtook Amazon in terms of market capitalization for the first time since 2002, when they were both valued at under $6 billion. On Monday local time, NVIDIA's market cap passed that of Amazon's to briefly become the fourth most valuable U.S.-listed company before closing with a valuation behind the e-commerce giant. The primary driver behind NVIDIA temporarily surpassing Amazon is the global frenzy surrounding artificial intelligence, further raising expectations that the chipmaker may become a $2 trillion company this year. NVIDIA currently holds around 80% of the high-end AI chip market, leading its shares to surge a whopping 223% over the past 12 months. 이수진, Arirang News.
The Sejong Cultural Society in the state of Illinois has a special place in its heart for Korea's cultural heritage, helping younger generations absorb Korean culture through music and literature. And to celebrate their 20th anniversary of doing so, a special concert took place. Yoon has this story.
The Sejong Cultural Society in Illinois has been working to raise awareness and understanding of Korea's cultural heritage among people in the United States. This year, the society is celebrating its 20th anniversary with a special Korean-themed concert. At the Galvin Recital Hall in Evanston, Illinois, performers included past winners of the Sejong Cultural Society's annual music competition for pre-college students. The competition itself was aimed at raising awareness of traditional Korean music. Participants perform one required piece and one of their own choosing.
They are so busy studying their own standard repertoire, so we wanted our required piece not too long, so usually 3 minutes or less, and must contain some Korean musical theme. So 20 years ago, we couldn't find any piece like that.
The Sejong Cultural Society has collected over 150 music pieces from talented composers who understand the goal of composing short yet creative instrumental solos for the piano and violin using Korean traditional melodies. It's these contemporary songs that were performed at the concert, with the composer's commentary explaining how they have implemented the traditional elements from the original song. Carissa, who won the senior division in 2015, played Joy of Onghea, a violin solo piece based on a Korean folk song.
We realized that competitions like Sejong really make a difference in young musicians' lives and help them become better artists. So I'm really honored and happy to have been able to help celebrate Sejong's 20th anniversary.
One of the cultural events that are organized annually is a Shijo competition, which introduces a traditional Korean poetic form of writing. Workshops for middle and high school teachers mean that more students can learn about Korean poetry. And by fostering cross-cultural understanding, the Sejong Cultural Society says it hopes to contribute to the harmonious existence of various ethnic backgrounds.
I think it's not only Korean descendants, but non-Koreans also appreciate this kind of music. And this is the time that we need more cross-cultural training, education. Multicultural competency is what they need to develop. So this is just one small thing that we can add.
Yoon, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Xiang, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in the United States, where the country's Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was put under general anesthesia on Monday to treat an emergent bladder issue. Austin has transferred his duties to his deputy following his hospitalization on Sunday. According to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, Austin had non-surgical procedures under general anesthesia, although doctors said in a statement on Monday that Austin will be able to resume his duties by Tuesday and that a prolonged hospital stay is not anticipated, the U.S. Defense Secretary was forced to cancel a planned trip to Brussels for the meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group due at the end of the week. This is Austin's third hospitalization since his prostate cancer diagnosis at the end of last December. Moving over to Finland, Conservative former Prime Minister Alexander Stubb has claimed victory in the Finnish presidential election. According to the Finnish Justice Ministry on Sunday, the National Coalition Party candidate won 51.6% of the votes, narrowly beating independent Green Party candidate Pekka Haavisto. Having been Finland's first election since it joined the NATO last year, 55-year-old Stubb is expected to take a hardline approach towards Russia's war on Ukraine, saying that he doesn't see any kind of communication with Putin or with the Russian political leadership in the near future. In sports news, Côte d'Ivoire have won the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations. The Ivorians secured the trophy with a 2-1 victory in Sunday's AFCON final against Nigeria at their home ground, the Alassane Ouattara Stadium in the Côte d'Ivoire city of Abidjan. Ivorians Franck Kessie and Sébastien Haller each scored in the second half of the final after Nigerian defender William Troost Ekong scored in the first half. 2023 AFCON host nation Côte d'Ivoire are the first host country to win the Cup of Nations since Egypt in 2006. Pop star Taylor Swift was at the Super Bowl on Sunday to celebrate her boyfriend Travis Kelce's triumph with the Kansas City Chiefs. Kelce, who plays tight end for the Chiefs, saw his team beat the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday and was seen celebrating afterwards with Swift at the Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. Taylor Swift is currently on a world tour and performed in Tokyo just a day before the Super Bowl. Many speculated she wouldn't be able to make it to the game, but flying in a private jet straight after her show, she landed with around 2 hours to spare before kickoff.
Good morning. The weather shifted toward the spring side after the long holiday weekend. Temperatures will soar to the mid-upper teens by the afternoon, going up nearly 10 degrees Celsius from seasonal norms. Then those in Daegu will notice temperature gaps of nearly 20 degrees Celsius today. If it weren't for the fine dust, it would be a perfect day to spend time outdoors. Central regions in Jeollabuk-do province and Gwangju will have bad air quality again, with Incheon being under an ultra-fine dust advisory this morning. But the rest of the country should have decent air to breathe in. Enjoy the weather if you can. Tomorrow, we can expect better air quality in most places. Highs will go up 3 to 5 degrees higher this afternoon. Daegu, Gwangju, Jeju will be all hiking up to 18 degrees Celsius this afternoon. But coastal regions will be quite windy, while dust-affected areas will see sunny skies blurred by that dust. Tomorrow will be even warmer than today before a wintry mix on Thursday brings down the temperatures to near seasonal norms. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, look my way. Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's February 13th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Cheska Hong.
Happy Tuesday, everyone.
Happy Tuesday. And Kim Sang-yeok.
Thanks for having me again.
All right. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. The Tokushima Prefecture in Japan is under scathing criticism for purchasing an extremely expensive sex doll to promote the city's tourism. The government's tourism division said it paid around $3,000 for this doll to be displayed at their airport. Auditors have since criticized the prefecture for going against social norms and asked them to seek compensation from the responsible officials. The prefecture had claimed that the sex doll was more effective than regular mannequins as a way to draw in more tourists. Moving on, we're just coming back from the Lunar New Year. Officials have found the number of police reports this year come down by 6.7% compared to 2023. The amount of car accidents also came down by 41.1% compared to last year as well. Police have made clear that they would dispatch enough personnel to prevent any crimes or accidents from happening during this period. And lastly, ever since the Korean government has decided to tackle its medical personnel shortage by expanding the number of eligible med school students, the country's doctors have been threatening to go on a nationwide strike, specifically from today. This hasn't swayed the presidential office, though. The top office on Monday said they would not retract their latest decision because it seems like the only plausible way to solve the shortage of doctors in rural areas amid an aging population. And for the first time in 19 years, officials have raised the medical school admission cap by an extra 2,000 students. This means from next year, a total of 5,038 students will be able to enroll in medical school. Officials believe this is still not enough, given that we are seeing a rapidly aging society. But here in the studio, what do you guys think about this latest measure? And we are seeing ongoing tensions between doctors, their associations, and officials. What are your thoughts on that?
So I understand the government's intention to increase the number of doctors to respond to the upcoming aging society, but it's my wonder whether that would actually solve the issues at all, because even today many medical school graduates prefer to go to financially promising departments like dermatology or plastic surgery rather than internal medicine or surgeries where we really need the doctors. And also many doctors usually work in metropolitan areas rather than rural sites. So I think rather than just increasing the cap of the headcounts, I think it's really important to equally distribute the number of medical staffs to each different fields and give more incentives to the doctors who volunteer to work in rural areas.
Exactly. Sang-yeok, you made a very compelling argument there, and that's a lot of what the public is thinking as well. Even on NewsGen, we covered back a few months ago when we did street interviews, a lot of people said the more critical problem is making sure that we have enough doctors at rural areas where we're seeing a shortage, and also in specific divisions of medical departments. Now, what about you, Cheska? What do you think about this ongoing tug of war between doctors' associations and the government?
You know, as a citizen of South Korea, more than anything, I would wish for both a patient like myself and the medical practitioner to reach a happy middle ground. But one thing that I'm torn about is that, at least according to the local news and the polls that have been surveyed by the people, overwhelming number of people do want an increase of, medical, people in the medical school. However, there's just as equally strong force of medical practitioners who are against this increase. So more than anything, I do hope that we find a happy middle ground, because let's face it, healthcare is the fundamental to a very strong country. And it is a bit saddening that there is a conflict and difference in opinion between the two parties, I suppose,
But that discrepancy shouldn't stop us from not tackling this problem.
Absolutely.
Which is exactly why the top office says now it's not the time to retract any measure. So we'll have to see whether this nationwide strike would happen and what type of consequences it can bring forth. But in the meantime, let's now switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day, digital nomads. It refers to people who travel freely while working remotely, all thanks to digital devices. And since COVID-19, we've seen a growing number of companies allow their employees to work from home, which has naturally opened the gateway for people to become digital nomads or aspire to become one. So here at the studio, have you two ever heard about this term digital nomads, and what do you think about them?
You know, it's a very popular trending term in our generation, and Sang-hyuk and I, we can both talk about it. But one of the things is that the number has definitely significantly increased since COVID, and I know this from my very personal own experience because remote working sort of became a norm or part of the option, and I personally had to negotiate very heavily to allow for flexibility in my work locations because for someone like me, it honestly increased my work productivity and efficiency by probably more than 300%.
300%,
and I'm not even exaggerating because I'm taking on much more projects than I did before. So I classify myself as a semi-nomad, a combination of nomadic work life plus an office life for specific projects and meetings. But there are so many YouTubers, programmers, you know, web designers that have so many areas that are now becoming fully or even like part-time nomads like myself. So it can be incredibly effective for people who have more than one project or jobs, and also they don't have to travel to the offices as much. Yeah.
Exactly. So we are seeing a surge of digital nomads, especially since COVID-19. And Sang-hyuk, are you a digital nomad yourself, and what do you think about this growing trend?
So even before the COVID-19, freelance interpreters and translators like me were already used to these kind of work patterns. So for interpretation, I usually go to certain venues, and once I finish my work, I can just return to my home. And there are often cases where I have to do remote interpretation in my room, which is more convenient than the actual on-site interpreting. And I think the translation is more fitting to the ultimate definition of digital nomad. I can do my translation if I have wireless internet and my laptop whenever and wherever I want. And I don't have to be worried about my boss, and I don't have to commute to a certain place or work. So it's really convenient. And if I ask my fellow interpreters and translators who work as a freelancer, they're all satisfied with their current lifestyle. And I'm also really enjoying this work patterns because I can use my time flexibly and freely.
I think it all comes down to convenience and not being tied down to any physical location. And because of that, digital nomads, the concept itself has become extremely popular among our generation. But Cheska, are there any stats to back this claim up? How many digital nomads are we seeing, and how much of people from our generation are trying to become one?
And I was particularly curious too because after COVID, I was quite sure that the number has surged. So I was also curious how much of our folks are out there. So let's take a look at the screen to find out. So according to Forbes, back in 2019, we had about a total of 11 million nomad folks around the globe. Now that almost tripled in the next 3 years, coming up to 2020 during and after COVID. And with this momentum, the projected number in the next decade is to reach about 1 billion worldwide. And Forbes did add that there's much higher propensity in Gen Z and our generation to become digital nomads, as they will also be the future workforce. Thus, I think that's why there is such high projected cost and forecast of digital nomads in the future. Now, one interesting thing I found from the article was that an overwhelming 80% of digital nomads expressed happiness not only in their lifestyle, but also in income. I feel like I'm a public announcement for digital nomads.
You're really promoting it out there.
I know, I'm like, come on people, sign up. The sign link is right there. But as we will discuss this a bit further, one particular reason is what's called a geographic arbitrage. Meaning they don't have to live in the city or the very highly populated work location. They can actually separate the living quarters with the work. As you know, Seoul City, there are so many expensive rent areas as you get closer to the metropolitan. So many young people have to spend an exorbitant amount to pay taxes and rents in this very popular city. And I did the same when I was living in New York. But now, because they're not tied to these locations, they can alleviate their cost as a starting young professional and save up that to maybe buy a house, maybe travel a bit more. So it offers, I guess, a bit more happiness.
A bit more happiness and a lot more liberty. And I think because our generation is so used to the concept of being a global citizen, we're no longer tied down to the concept of having to stay in your hometown forever and ever. You can just travel about, actually work in your dream city and then change it in a few months. Now, we asked our viewers what they think about digital nomads themselves. Here's what 3 of them had to say. Let's start with User. User said, living my life as a digital nomad may give me many opportunities and flexibility, but I love stability and am not an adventurous person. I love my friends and family here. Leon Teo said, I admire the freedom and flexibility flexibility associated with the digital nomad lifestyle, but I do think it is often romanticized on social media, overlooking the challenges and realities like income stability, instability, visa issues, and social isolation. Tasmia said, "It is my dream to work as a digital nomad because I don't need to talk to anyone in real life, just the people from the internet, and it boosts my confidence." Now, as our
I love these comments.
Exactly. I think they did a great job in really encapsulating what the pros and cons are. But as digital nomads yourselves,
Yes.
I think you guys could better relate to what the pros and cons are, especially you, Cheska, because you've not only been a digital nomad, but you've also worked in the office before.
Absolutely.
So based on your experience, could you really categorize the pros and cons of being a digital nomad?
I think I can very much do that for you. And I would just want to add that Leon, I think, nailed it perfectly when it comes to pros and cons.
Right.
But one of the greatest benefits of obviously being a digital nomad is flexibility and efficiency. So also when it comes to digital nomad, I think one of the things that you have to be very careful about is that you have to be your own time manager.
So true.
So when you're not being accountable for the time that you're spending on your project or your work, you can have 365 days of being unemployed and be on vacation and not make a single dime. I'm just going to be really honest out there. But if you're super productive and if you really become your best boss, then you can be working 365 days around the clock, where someone like me who gets an office 3 minutes away from her house so she can save every single minute of her time to pour into the project and work. It's really about a balance and how disciplined you are to enjoy that freedom that is given to you.
And you mentioned discipline. I also think it has to do with the company as well. Given that you're a freelance digital nomad, I think it comes down to your self-discipline. But for companies that are promoting this, I think it comes down to their regulations and whether they have enough policies to boost productivity while ensuring that the digital nomad is working and happy at the same time. Now, as a digital nomad who's done a lot of interpretation and translation, what would you think are the pros and cons?
Well, like Cheska mentioned, managing your time without restriction is the biggest advantage of digital nomads. And usually jobs like these have a wage system based on your performance rather than the working hours. So you can make much money as you want, depending on your accomplishments, which is, I think, is a good thing if you are really productive and you're workaholic. So, but there are downsides as well when it comes to being a digital nomad. So, because there's no clear starting time and finish time of your work hours, there might be less work-life balance compared to what you actually think that digital nomads would have. And also, because digital nomads, you have to always respond to the calls from your clients, which means that if you miss an opportunity, then the chances are that you will fall behind the competition and that opportunity will go to others. Yes.
So you have to be on your phone 24/7.
Right. So there was a time I missed a call from my client and it was like a 5 minutes delay and I missed this very lucrative opportunity.
What?
It was really depressing.
But you were only out for 5 minutes.
Right. So, but the thing is that the competition is really fierce, and others will obviously take away your chance. And by the way, when I go to shower, I always take my smartphone just in case I don't miss any calls from my clients.
Oh my gosh! So that experience actually has pushed you to bring
it was
your
really
phone
traumatizing.
inside the shower because you lost that opportunity.
See how traumatizing and scary digital nomads can be.
Exactly. So I do agree with our viewers' comments that the concept of digital nomad could be a bit romanticized, but to find out better about what the pros and cons are, we're now going to include another fellow millennial digital nomad in our talks. Stay tuned for our live interview. We're now going to include a fellow Gen Z who's been working as a digital nomad. It's Chi-Bae. Welcome, Chi.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
All right, so Chi, we've been going around and talking about the concept of digital nomad. Both of our panelists here in the studio are digital nomads. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself as to what you're doing as a digital nomad and how long it's been?
So I'm a web developer. So it's been a little bit more than 5 years since I started working as digital nomad. Yeah.
And how'd you become one?
Oh, well, I've always had the idea of trying out the lifestyle, but I actually began my first digital nomad experience in 2019. And then after the pandemic started. So the concept of remote work became increasingly popular despite the travel restrictions. And with more and more people transitioning to remote work or working from home, it made sense for me to explore the possibility as well. And I chose a few cities that I always have been curious about, and packed my life into a single suitcase and headed off for a couple of weeks in Spain. Yeah, that's how I started my first journey.
You were basically a pioneer for digital nomads even before the pandemic. Yeah, Cheska, would you like to ask the second question?
Yes.
Yeah,
sorry, let me just move on really quickly. So I know that there are romanticized version of the digital nomad lifestyle. Could you tell us what it's like to actually be a digital nomad? Maybe give us one pro and one con based on your life experiences.
Yeah, being a digital nomad is these days very romanticized, but in reality, it's a very similar journey to being an immigrant in a new place. So you choose a city or a country you want to live and work from, and you experience the same struggles and joys of adapting to a new environment. So I think the key difference is that you sustain yourself financially through the work. Sometimes it can be very tiring to constantly move to new places, make new friends, and let go of past connections. But the journey offers invaluable opportunities to learn about different cultures and to really learn about yourself. So it's a lifestyle that makes you feel free from being tied down to a single place, and it really allows you to explore the world.
Okay, so Ji, I can imagine there may be quite a few distractions as you work as a digital nomad. So any personal tips as to staying productive and always focused?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Cheska mentioned it earlier too, but these distractions can be very challenging, especially when you live and work in really tourist-heavy places. So my personal tip would be to avoid like busy cities, so you don't get swayed by the touristy atmosphere. I think it's all about finding a good balance between work and fun. And along the same lines, I make an effort to separate my work and living spaces. So personally, I find that having access to co-working spaces is very useful for both my productivity and for social aspects. Also, establishing set work hours, making your own daily routines can really help you disconnect from work, and so that you can make time and energy to enjoy the local social life. Yeah.
And see, if I may ask one last question, do you hope to see more people become digital nomads like yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's nice to see other nomad folks when you travel, and you can share like the similar experiences, and it's nice to see other, let's say, Koreans doing the same thing, and yeah, it's great. Yeah.
All right, so hopefully this digital nomad culture will continue, but the romanticized versions need to be sent to the public in order for them not to have the wrong image before, stepping in. But thank you so much, Ji. It was a pleasure hearing from you today and your experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we're going to end off with what we just asked Chi. How would you guys like to see this digital nomad culture evolve from now on? And as we mentioned, I don't think it's for everyone, right? So any words of advice or precautionary measures that people should put into mind before actually deciding to become a digital nomad?
Before I mentioned, after a discussion, what are your thoughts on digital nomads?
This is actually something that I've been contemplating for a while, because as a reporter, I have actually reported on workation, and I thought that concept was amazing.
It's exciting.
I know. I would be like, you're on vacation, but you're working. Wouldn't you be able to balance it out? But then I reflected back to my years back in grad school when I was freelancing and I was a semi-digital nomad myself. Right. It takes so much self-discipline and it takes so much training. And I realized it's really not for everyone. So though this is trending, I do think that the regular 9 to 6 office hours and actually staying in the office can boost productivity and motivation. And for me, I just love coming to the office sometimes. I love picking out my outfit. I love thinking about what I want to have lunch with my colleagues.
Like talking to the colleagues about the day before,
exactly.
during the day.
That sociable life, that work for me is really nice. So for me personally, though I do think that a digital nomad could be all about the blitz and blare about it, but at the same time, I don't think it's for everyone, nor do I want to push it. But what about you?
I'm so glad you mentioned it because I already knew, because we had a prior discussion, that you would be able to represent another side of not being a digital nomad. But one thing that I go by, a quote that I go by is, for absolute freedom, you need absolute discipline.
That's so true.
So people only look at the one side and say, oh my God, I can go to different locations, make new friends, and have all these great great lifestyle. However, when we talk about work-life balance, if you're not carefully managing every single minute of your time, there's a work-life blur.
That's so true.
Where, as I mentioned before, you can have 365 days of nothing or 365 days of everything. So I would like to, kind of mention to all those potential digital nomad out there that they carefully evaluate their own self before they jump into something, a sort of romanticized lifestyle. And also, I do hope that in the future, more companies do give an option of digital nomad lifestyle, given a very constructive and strict conditions on productivity and efficiency.
Exactly. It should come hand in hand. And as a fellow digital nomad, any tips of advice or anything, any thoughts on how you'd like to see this culture go from now?
So before you jump on to become a digital nomad, you have to ask yourself whether you can actually adapt your personality to the lifestyle of digital nomad. And a caveat that I would like to make here is that if you think that digital nomad can balance work and life, you gotta think twice because actually the fact that you always have to do work always lingers in your heart. So I think this is the one factor that makes the boundary between the work and life blurry for digital nomads. But still, I think it's a good sign that more and more companies in Korea are willing to accept diverse types of work styles. And but for now, because here in Korea we have so many workaholics, I think we still have much more way to go. We have still much more way to go when it comes to accepting the digital nomad system into our society.
Exactly, and I think I hope to see more infrastructure, maybe better workation places, or workplaces that digital nomads can go freely about. And I got an idea from Ji's interview, if there's a community of digital nomads where they can share information and actually socialize too, because I think the biggest con there is because you're working alone and remotely, you don't really have time to talk with any of your colleagues. Maybe bringing that work environment in by bringing like community events, that could be an idea too. And hopefully we'll see such infrastructure come forth. But in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Cheska Dainha.
Pleasure's always mine, thank you.
And Im Sang-yeop.
My pleasure.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
Welcome